would put the information in the chat box if you would be willing to do it and what facility you're with. Or if you don't feel comfortable right now making that decision and putting it in the chat box, if you could get it back to Ebony, I would say by the end of today, tomorrow, so that she can report back up to the federal partners. I know that they are waiting on that information. So we apologize for the quick request and the quick turnaround, but they are also, our Fed partners are also operating on a very quick turnaround as well. And I know that you all can watch the news just like I can watch the news. And so you can understand the, what is happening in the sense of urgency.
Okay. And again, we have very limited information. Essentially, what I've just explained is the information that we have. But as we gather more information, they may be willing to, I'm sure they'll provide us with additional information. But just again, just kind of a soft feel of who may be possibly available to accept any of those children. Okay, and then keep in mind that those children will have language barriers, so there's something to consider as well. Okay.
And I would think, this is Jennifer with Haven, will those children be in DCFS custody? And I would think that QRTP could not take them just because there's qualifications for QRTP as far as behavioral and mental health qualifications.
Jennifer, that's a very good point. And to our knowledge and understanding, you are correct. This will not be any kind of a therapeutic facility. So if you've got that license type, no, this would be a residential. If you are the director, owner, CFO, CEO of a residential, if your license type is residential, that is our understanding too. And in terms of in DCFS custody, not to our knowledge, this would be a federally run request. And so, like Ebony said, we don't know all the ins and outs of it yet, just in terms of like who would be tracking or following the children, or what additional requirements, if any, there will be. We really don't know all of that information just yet. So I know we're asking you to try to make a decision on very limited information, but again, I think the ask is just, would we have any facilities, residential facilities in the state of Arkansas that would be interested in participating in this? And then we are to report back up that information. And then it's my understanding at that point, then we could potentially get more information.
Okay, thank you.
This is Andy Alton with Methodist Family Health. I wanted to distinguish two things. We don't have the staff or the bilingual capabilities to serve these clients right now, but we do have some freestanding capacity, meaning, homes that would be separate from any of our programs with beds and those type things. So we could participate in that way. But as far as having the staff, we don't have them at this point. And I would think that there would be, I'd like to know what your stance is on licensing, background checks, all that stuff, to try to ramp that up if we were to do that.
Andy, you make a really good point. And it's something that we also shared with the Fed partners about, how quickly is the turnaround and how quickly could the facilities anticipate this, because of exactly what you said. You're talking about staffing. You could potentially need more staff to keep in ratios. And so they would have to have background checks. I think that what we could do is cross that bridge when we get there. If we had some of you guys that wanted to participate, I think that we would need to work out some plan or process to get those individuals quickly processed. So I think that is something we'll have to think about and get a game plan in place if this comes to fruition. In terms of meeting the licensing requirements, we're going to have to meet them. Now, there might be some give and take on some of the regulations, but those pertaining to supervision, safety, those things we would need to look at for sure. Of course, we can work with you, saying that, we can work with you on that, but there has to be some foundation to just those very critical regulations. And then I see some comments over in the comment box too, in the chat box, and we talked with them as well about dual language speakers. Would the facilities have someone on site that can communicate with the children in their first language? And so if you all had somebody that was Spanish, predominantly Spanish speaking on your staff, then that would be fantastic, great. And Andy, your idea, like if you've got space that's separate from your general population, or you have, because we were thinking, trying to think big in terms of like, does anybody have a facility maybe that wasn't in use, that could be in use? Could we look through that? So I think all of those things are things that we need to consider to the extent that your facility can. And again, this is just a entry into asking the question. So you all tell us, like, think as big as you want, or as focused as you want, but just let us know if you would have any interest. And then what we can do is connect back with our federal partners and see, what they think about it. And in the meantime, see what the other states and how the other states have responded, because I think the thing on everybody's mind here is to try to keep the children as close to where they first entered as possible, so that you can have, hopefully you can have some sort of reunification with their own parent, or the children are not being moved so far away from where they originated.
Very good questions. So again, if you could either enter your willingness, or if you're unable to participate, in the chat box, or just shoot me an email, that'll be fine as well. And I'll enter my email address in the chat box in just a minute. So the other discussion point that I wanted to just kind of ask everyone about is concerning your facilities, or your programs. And if I can hear from some of you, what are you guys doing for when you have idle time for your youth at your facilities? Like, how do you handle that? How is that managed? And what are you seeing when there's a lot of idle time at your facilities? Anyone?
This is Shelton with Open Arms, Shelton Walker with Open Arms.
Go ahead.
And one of the things that we're doing with our youth, we're really focusing in on those independent living skills, because a lot of our youth are in that range of 16 to 17. We even have a couple of 18-year-olds. And so we're really focusing on independent living skills, getting them focused on what it's going to be like once they transition from our placement to what they call the real world. And that may be job application skills, getting them ready to drive, stuff of that nature, because they have questions about that. And so that's really important to them.
Okay. Thank you. Miss is it Tanisha? You're muted, so I couldn't hear you. You're muted again.
Now.
There you go.
Okay. We do much the same. We do the basic living skills, independent skills. Also, we do, we have a state park and then a local park we go to for physical activities and so forth. We have a walking trail where we try to instill, like citizenship, picking up trash, cleaning up a walking trail for the town, and so forth. Sometimes we'll divide them up and go to the grocery store and just do those independent living skills, but it's an opportunity for them to get out in the community also and learn some shopping skills, budgeting, and so forth. And occasionally, if we have enough money, we might go to a movie or something as that.
So for residential facilities and PRTFs, do you feel that your expectations for the youth are being met for when they discharge? Like, do you feel like they've learned so much from your facility that they're going to be okay when they leave? Like, are you guys there yet, or are there some things that need to be worked on? Like, can I get some feedback from you all?
Well, this is Craig Gammon with Methodist here. I can put my video on too. So with the PRTS, we've been trying to ramp up a lot with the weather getting nicer, of getting outings going, getting outside activities. But at that level, it also varies a lot on the kid and their family supports as to what we feel like. And you know, we'd like to get them, you know, from that getting there at level 1 to get to 10 and be all ready to go. Realistically, with the kids that we've been getting in our RTC, we're trying to get them to that next step where they can go back and be ready for public schools, go into a family or a foster home setting, and you know, be successful there. Now, do they still have a long ways to go? Some of them do, and some of them, of course, are more equipped than others. With the QRTP level kids, it still varies a great deal depending on that particular child and their supports. The older ones, we've been trying to move into independent living situations, one way or the other, whether that's on to school or to a supervised independent living home. We've had several that moved out in the last month. That are they ready for the real world? No, but they're ready to take the step to start getting there. They still need some assistance. They need some supervision and some help, but we have had several that have moved on that I think are pretty much ready to take that step. So we've had a mixed bag in that, and that we also have some that have not, that we've worked with that just, they get to almost 18 years old and they're still really struggling depending on their developmental level and just their behavioral issues. We've had some real conduct problems as well that are difficult to deal with. So where we can, sure, we have had some good successes. We still have some struggles as well. I don't think probably everybody experiences that to some degree.
Thank you, Mr. Gammon. Does anyone else have anything?
This is Paul from the Children's Home. We seem to have better success with kids that we reunite with families because, like most kids, me included, something happens to a kid's brain when they turn 17. You know, we do prepare them, give them what they need, but it's just that once they get that freedom, again, their brains, you know, they're still developing until 25. So you just pray that they don't do anything dumb enough where it's going to affect their long-term life. But we certainly have scholarships for kids that leave us, that become our alumni. We stay in touch. We have homecomings once a year. But with the kids that reunite, because we have an extensive family unification program, 8 Saturdays a year, once a month, basically, we have a little more success with them.
Good deal. Are there any issues with, so I know we have a lot of out-of-state kids at a lot of facilities. Are there any issues with staying in contact with their caseworkers? And I've noticed that there are quite a few out-of-state children that have been in Arkansas placements or facilities for over a year. Can anyone like kind of discuss the barriers with that, or is it there's no plan for them to return, or there's no one there for them, or there's just issues in the placement that they're at where they're not meeting their goals and they're not ready to be released? Like, can anybody kind of share any information on what may possibly be the reason for a child to remain in care or in a placement for over a year. Okay.
Well, this is Craig Gammon again. Are you talking about just the out-of-state kids or any kids for over a year?
Well, any kids for over a year.
The ones that we have that are longer really are the ones that both QRTP and some end up on contract in our RTC that do not have another suitable placement. So that's the biggest single problem, is either from lack of support, lack of family or place to go, or their particular behavioral issues. It is very, very difficult to place them. So we try to work with DHS to get them into a spot, and just there are times we just cannot do that. And so then they end up being there because it is the best available placement, whether it's the best place. Certainly we'd rather have them go back to a family or even into an independent step or down to a foster home, but it just isn't available. So that tends to be the reason that ours hang on for over a year, is just because there's no place else for them to go.
This is June with CET. I would say ditto to what he just said, Mr. Gammon just said. And another issue just recently came up where this dad was going to consent to TPR, and his attorney did not get the paperwork to him in time. So court got extended. And then the court, due to the pandemic, that also delayed some things. So that's the most recent issue that came up because the paperwork was not done timely. So that's another reason for the extension. And I think that what I've noticed too, being a former DHS worker, is that we try to work with the parents as long as possible to get them ready so that the child can return to the home. And a lot of times that does not happen, even though it's like you want it more than they do. And so I think that that's some of the things that have happened with a DHS worker trying to work things out, giving the parents another chance, give them a little bit more time, and then before you know it, it's past a year's gone.
Thank you, Ms. Johnson.
Could I ask a general question? I
Mhm.
put it in the chat, or is this not the time? It's about Medicaid and how to access Medicaid. I'm talking specifically about private kids from out of state. We've had problems accessing Medicaid in Arkansas when kids come from out of state. And so if any of you can help me with that, that'd be great.
I
put my email
don't
on
know
there.
the answer to that, so I may refer someone else.
But my email, I'll put it online and if anybody can help, that'd be great.
Have any of the providers had any issues with accessing Medicaid for out-of-state youth? Or has it been successful for you? Any feedback?
Paul, I think you bring up a great question, and I hope you don't mind me calling you Paul. I'm going to take a stab at your last name just because I love names. So is it Scandavel? You're on mute.
Yeah, Shandavel's fine. I mean, Paul's fine. Shandavel's too long.
Scandavel. Good. That is a cool last name. I'm glad that you asked that question because you guys, we are hoping that this call with you all, with all the providers together, will morph into a learning more from you, definitely from on our side, because we are heavily regulation focused and looking at regulations, and we are trying to deepen our own understanding about all the connecting pieces. We've had great success with doing a provider call over on our childcare side, where the providers have become more comfortable in asking each other questions. And so we're hoping that we will experience that on our placement and residential provider calls too. So if you guys are on the call and you can help Paul out, then please do so. Please email him and talk him through how does that work.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I understand. I'm going to go ahead and state the elephant in the room. And I'm a very frank speaker, by the way, you all, but I do realize that you all are serving the same population of children, but there are plenty of children in need. And so if we can get to a place where we can talk with each other about this is what I'm doing and this has been successful at my program, I think that it will help all of us, but more importantly, it will help the children. And I know that you guys are like-minded with us in that bottom line, at the end of the day, we're trying to all advocate for children. That is the most important thing to us. So Paul, I appreciate you jumping in there and just asking the question, and hopefully somebody will respond.
Well, thank you, Ashley.
Okay, so there will be a regulatory check or background check training on, I believe it's Monday, April the 5th. Is that correct, Paige and Nora? Okay, and it will be at 12 p.m. and we'll send out another reminder with the Zoom link. So if you're still having issues or concerns or questions about any of the online procedures for regulatory checks, and I'm saying regulatory because we're trying to get away from saying background. So just feel free to participate in that provider call on Monday, and we will get the information out to you. I currently do not have any updates concerning COVID-19. I'm not sure if any of you have anything to share about COVID-19. For the most part, I have not been receiving a lot of notifications that there are a lot of positives, or you've had a lot of positives at your facility. So that sounds like a good thing for me. So it seems to be a turnaround, and hopefully we can keep that going. So I believe that is all that I had. If there are any questions from any of you that you would like to ask while we have you available, please feel free to go ahead and do so. Okay. If there are not any additional questions, that is all that I had, and this would conclude our discussion for today. Thank you so much for participating.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.